Years ago, God started teaching me and some people around me this lesson that I'm still trying to figure out. It's something that the more I lean into, the more life fills up, and we just want to invite all of us into this for the next month or so. Years ago, I was a student pastor and oversaw high school ministry. And one of the things that we would do each year at this church that I was at is we would take a mission trip to the Dominican Republic. We would spend 7 or 8 days. We'd go down to the exact same place and partner with the exact same pastor and watch the exact same kids grow up and serve the community and do this awesome stuff over the course of the week. And it would really shape these students and these leaders and solidify some relationships and kind of blow people's mind a little bit about how big God is. The first year that I led this as a staff member, I think we took like 40, 45 students. The next year, I think we took 60. The year after that, we took 80 students. At this point, you may be questioning my sanity, and you're right. I was too, especially the fourth time we got on the bus, and we only had one of the two Hernandez twins. We circled back. We found them every time. It was totally fine. If you've ever seen A Bug's Life and know the roly-poly bugs in that, those are the Hernandez twins. We call them the Hernandi. So many stories from these trips. It was awesome, but what I noticed right out of the gate in the first couple of years is we would get the exact same question about 2,000 times a day, right? And it came in two different forms. One form was this: what time is it? And I'm just like, oh my gosh, if another person asks me what time it is, again, I am going to probably lose my job. Or they would ask this: where are we going now? What are we doing next? What's going to happen here? And it's like over and over and over. So you take that and multiply it by 40 and 60 and 80, right? And the adults were a little more covert about it, but they wanted to know too, right? They were always concerned about what was coming. And what we started to notice a little bit as we went along was that in their constant attention to what was ahead, they were missing what was right in front of them. That over and over, they were so concerned about there and then that they were missing out on here and now. There were things that were right around them. They would be so consumed about when the bus was going to leave because we were waiting on the side of the street that they would miss out that there was an awesome child right next to them ready to play a game with them if they would just engage. Or as we were riding along in the bus, they'd be so concerned about where we were going to that they would miss totally on the culture of where we were at right then. And so we came up with this little thing that started to shape these teams very differently. And by the time we took 80, or the next year we took like 110, but we realized that it reshaped the trip completely. They went from missing out on everything that was around them to finding a peace and a comfort of just being right where they were. We did this by starting our training of all these students from the very first meeting after they had signed up and decided to go. We used two phrases that we used over and over and over and over. And what we said was, you have 2 jobs on this trip, just 2. The only 2 jobs you have on this trip is, number 1, be fully present in every moment and don't miss an opportunity. Be fully present in every moment and don't miss an opportunity. And this reshaped the trip for students. Now, don't get me wrong, as we're traveling with this extremely noisy horde through all of the airport and all the different places to get there, and even for the first day while we were there, they were still concerned about where we were going, what time it is. But we squashed that really quickly because every single time they would ask what time it was, we would say, it's now. Oh, what time are we going to go get lunch? Oh, we're going to go get lunch at a time called now, but it's after now. There'll be lots of nows in a row, and then there'll be a now where it's time to go get lunch. Right? When are we going to be done working for the day? Oh, it's probably, there'll be a now. But right now, it's just now. Where are we going? We're going by the bank. We just look around. Wherever we are, that's where we are. Right? And it started, they just got so frustrated at us, they just stopped asking, which was glorious, and it was actually what we were aiming for. But what we noticed was this: that in those times that they didn't know exactly what was coming next, or they didn't know how much longer the wait would be, or how much longer they'd be sitting on the bus, or how long the drive was, it located them, it pulled them back from there and then and pulled them into here and now. And what they realized was here and now was really, really great. And here and now, even if it was waiting on the side of the street for a bus, held all kinds of opportunity to engage and connect with other people, to listen differently to the people around them, to soak up the surroundings, to savor the moment that they were in a completely different country doing some amazing things with the exact same God they had encountered in their hometown. This idea of being fully present is powerful, and I'm wondering if it might help us this Christmas season. In fact, I wonder if this season could be a time that reshapes the way we think a little bit about our lives, that I don't think it's just the Christmas season that we're looking to there and then. Now, I know that it's a season of preparation. We're buying gifts. Amazon boxes are like flooding your front door. There's cooking and purchasing and all that kind of stuff that has to happen. There's travel plans. There's all these things that are targeted at there and then. But the temptation is that we're missing out on some really awesome things here and now. We're so focused on another moment that we're missing the one right in front of us. And the cool thing is, if we would learn this and train ourselves in this crazy busy season, this could carry us all the way through. Not only would it make the Christmas season count in a fresh and new way, it might also help us step into the new year in a really cool way. Because I don't think it's just students in the Dominican Republic. I think it's all of us, that we think so much about there and then that we miss out on some really awesome things about here and now. That if we were fully present in every moment, we might see more of what God has to offer us. In fact, Jesus talked a lot about this and our tendency to be pulled into the future. In Matthew chapter 6, he asked this really pointed question that we all know the answer to. He says, can all of your worries add a single moment to your life? Has anyone by worrying accomplished more time for their life? Anyone? Anyone? Feel free to raise a hand. We all know the answer to this question, right? The answer is no. But do you know what adding all of these worries in our life can do? They can rob us of the moment that we're in right now. They can't add anything, but they can take things away. Our mind can carry us into the past or into the future, and we would miss out on this moment that we call now. And so what does Jesus say to do? He says it's really simple. In Matthew chapter 6, verse 34, he says, don't worry about tomorrow, which is easier said than done, right? For tomorrow will bring its own worries. Today's trouble is enough for today. Can anyone just give me a little head nod, a little like you don't even have to believe Jesus to know that's true, right? Today's trouble is enough for today. That as we live in the present, it's just about all we can really handle. And when we start to throw the past and the future in the mix, it just becomes too much, and we miss the things that are right in front of us. And the truth is, God has something in every single moment for us, that every minute can matter if we will be present. And so we're going to lean in with this kind of thesis statement, this idea, the whole point of this month of thinking about this, that presence is really a gift. That being present with someone is a gift that we can offer them. And them being present with us is something they can offer us. And maybe if we could just step out of the lie that we're constantly into, that somehow, some way we're expected to be all things to all people, everywhere, all the time, in all times, in all places, and instead just zero in, stop multitasking for a minute and monotask and just lean in on right where we are and right when we are, that God would do some really cool things in our lives. Now, as persistent as the past can be and as enticing as the future can be, the present is really where it's at. And so let's just give a quick definition of what the presence really means. To be present means being attentive and available to this moment, right? Just because you're in the room or logging on doesn't mean you're actually attentive and available to this present moment, right? You ever been around someone that you're looking at them and we're like, yeah, you're not here right now. A buddy of mine, Jim, was telling me a story about his friend who was kind of perpetually late for meetings. He was one of those guys, and I don't know, maybe you're one of these guys, who books their calendar back to back to back to back to back and slams anything in. And a gap in a calendar is meant to be filled, so you slam about 4 things in there. And so he operated with like no margin whatsoever. So he would sprint from place to place to place, and usually 10 to 12 minutes late. So they would be sitting in a meeting, and in walks his buddy in a flurry of papers and coats and bags and emotion and everything else, and he sits down, and he does this in such a way every single time. The whole meeting just kind of comes to a stop, and everybody just looks at them. And his opening line every single time is this: I'll be here in a minute. Because he hadn't arrived yet. Physically, he had sat down, but mentally, he was nowhere to be found. And his line was, I'll be here in a minute. I was doing some prep for this whole idea about being present. I was sitting on the couch, and my son comes up to me and starts talking to me. And finally, he looks at me and he goes, Dad, put the phone down. I'm like, dang it. My son is calling me out on the thing I'm about to tell everybody else to do. right? In fact, there's a picture I took because one of my sons had done a project at school, and it's like 6:30 in the morning at this point. I'm trying to crank out this outline that's printed on thousands of pieces of paper to give to all of you this weekend. I'm trying to get things done because there and then is coming, and I got to be ready for it and all those other things. And I'm doing all this work and cranking away at the computer, and my son sits down next to me on this bench, and he thinks that it's the exact right time to tell me about his how-to project about how to make a root beer float. Now, newsflash, I already know how to make a root beer float. This is not helpful information to me. But this is a picture of the tension that I think a lot of us live in. That on one side is there and then and all the things that need to happen to get where we're going, and right here is this moment to enjoy my son being proud of something that he did, to lock eyes, to shift my whole body and offer him my attention and my availability in an expression of care and love and presence, and tell him that that cherry is probably way too big for real life. Right? This is the tension that we feel. Pulled to there and then, but opportunity here and now. So whether you're on a date and trying to focus in instead of watching the TV, or you're walking through the hall and it's time to stop and talk and give someone your attention instead of hustling to the next thing, we all wrestle with this. Presence is a gift. Now, here's all we're going to accomplish today, because we got a whole month to get through this. Today, all we're going to accomplish is this. I'm going to try to pull us out and get every single one of us to just question the notion of why there and then is more important than here and now. To get all of us to want to be here and now, to present a case of why here and now matters at least as much as there and then, and that we can actually be here and now. And then for the rest of the month, we'll talk more about how we go about that. But if we walk away from here and say, I just want to be present, I want to offer people my presence, I want to be here and now instead of being constantly pulled to there and then, we will have one. So I'm going to give you 5 reasons. I'm going to give you 5 of them. 5 reasons to be present. 5 reasons that being fully present is way better than being pulled in all directions at all times. And the first one is this, that here is where joy is. Here is where you find joy. I don't know anybody who said, you know what, in my life, I would like less joy. I have way too much joy in my life. I would like more of whatever the opposite of joy is. No one wants that. But here's the thing. You may have experienced joy in the past, and you can remember that, right? Facebook will remind you on the anniversary of when you posted that picture of how that went, right? And you may even anticipate joy in the future and look forward to that. And that's really, really great. We look forward to Christmas morning and all the things in this season ahead. But here is actually the only place that you can experience joy. It only comes about in a moment called now, right? That we have to be present to. Joy is a thing that you must be present to win. It's not something that you can phone in from a distance. You have to be there when it happens. In fact, joy can be remembered and it can be anticipated in the future, but it can only be experienced here and now. We're going to lean into this in a big way next week as we look at the story of Mary and Elizabeth. In fact, on your outline, I'm not going to use a lot of scripture today because I'm going to encourage you to read through the story of Christmas. I just put the 2 places in a Bible or in your app where you can find the Christmas story, and I'm going to point at some characters today that you can look at as you read through that story and watch for how presence changes the whole story for them. And for Mary and Elizabeth, we have so much to learn from them. We'll lean into it next week about how they savored this season of being pregnant together, of the birth of a son, of all the tension and all the things that went around that, all the theirs and thens that they could have been pulled away to, but instead, there are some really cool moments of them just being right where they are, trusting God for what would come, not getting sucked into grieving the past of what they had expected, but instead just savoring and soaking up joy in the moments that God had for them. And my inclination, we'll talk more about this next week, is that we often are anticipating joy in a future moment sometime, that we are missing out on a lot of joy that God has for us right in this moment. In fact, the story of Christmas is that God showed up, and in his showing up and rescue, the Holy Spirit actually becomes part of our life, and one of the things that he produces in our life all the time is joy. That the fruit of the Spirit, Galatians 5 says, is joy. And there is joy to be had in these moments, not just in those moments, but you must be present to win. Here is where joy is. So we want to be here. Here is also where love is. If you want to experience love, here is the only place that you can do that. There and then is going to be here eventually, but here is the only place that you can really experience love. And if you were to read through the story, you'll see this with Joseph, you'll see this with Jesus. That when people love you, one of the things that they do is they show up. Like my mom, who went to every football game that I ever played and shouted all kinds of things that would have been great to shout at a basketball game. But nevertheless, she showed up and she shouted. So I knew I mattered to her. Or a few weeks ago, Christy Templeton, our worship pastor here, who oversees all the worship leaders for us at all of our campuses, she has been leading and doing some really cool things in ministry for a lot of her life. And we celebrated and affirmed that and pointed to a moment in her story that we call ordination, where you move from being a leader to being a pastor, where we say, you know what, because of what God has been up to in your life, we want to just say and affirm that God has called you to do this with your life. And so we had an event, and 150 people showed up. People from California, people from Indiana, people from Kentucky, people from her college days, people from all the different seasons of her career, people from right now. And do you know what she felt when all those people showed up? Loved. Because being here shows that we love someone, being present. My son on the bench in my kitchen with his root beer float activity experienced love because I took my attention from one thing and gave it to him. We all know that our attention and our availability can be offered a million places. And we've got devices in our pocket that can take us anywhere in the world at a moment's notice. But there is something really powerful when we take all of those possibilities and we choose one and we offer it to a person in front of us. Because here is the only place we can really love. In fact, the harder it is to be here, the more love it expresses, right? Right? When someone flies across the country for an event, doesn't that express a greater degree of love than somebody driving across the street? We're going to look at this in a couple of weeks of how do we be here when it's hard? Because Joseph had a hard time being here. If I'm engaged to a girl who ends up pregnant and I don't understand all of that and all of the things that go into that culture that we'll talk about, it's really hard to be here. But there was an expression of love, of staying and being present, and God had some amazing story to write in the midst of that it expressed love. Or better yet, what we'll talk about on Christmas Eve. So I hope you grab some cookies or do whatever you need to do to invite your friends because they need to hear this. That God loved us so much that he showed up. That he didn't stay at a distance. He stepped into our mess and eye to eye, face to face says, I'm here for you. There's no greater expression of love than showing up. Here is where love is, and that's why Jesus came here. Now, not only is here where joy is, here is love, and so being fully present, right? If we're going to do this for the month, being fully present is a powerful expression of love. When we stop everything else and we give someone our availability and our attention, we show them you have value, you have worth. I'm going to offer love to you. So here is joy, here is where love is, and here is where opportunity is. That in a moment, if we're really, really present, we see all the opportunities to help. This was true for all the students in the Dominican Republic, that they got to play games with kids they may have never even noticed before, that they got to have conversations with their friends, that it didn't matter how long the bus ride was. They could just engage right where they're at. And the same is true for every single one of us, that when we are present, we get to see all the kinds of opportunities to connect, that being present lets us see how we connect with one another. If you read the Christmas story, and I hope that you do this week, you'll see a couple of characters in Luke chapter 2 that most people don't think a lot about. A guy named Simeon, who had waited his whole life, that God had revealed to him. He followed God closely, and God said, hey, Simeon, you are going to see the Savior everyone's been waiting for. And finally, in his old age, he's wondering if it's going to happen, he gets to step in and bless Mary and Joseph and affirm one more time that God was doing exactly what God had told Mary and Joseph that he was going to do with this little boy. There was another woman named Anna who had lost her husband after only 7 years of marriage. And we find her story at 84 years old. She's praying in the temple, which would have been 60 years probably after losing her husband. That she had been present with God, and being present with God and being present in the temple, she finds herself in the midst of Mary and Joseph's story in a really cool way. Because they were present, they saw how they could connect. In the same way that the wise men had this opportunity. Because they said, hey, this star thing's a big deal, and because they traveled all the way to see Jesus, they see this opportunity to help Mary and Joseph say, look, you guys are in danger. You need to get this child out of here. And they're able to help because they were present. And the same is true for all of us. In fact, the best gifts that you offer people, the ones that make people light up on Christmas, is because you've been present enough to know them well, to connect with them and see the very thing that they've been wanting or needing. That only when we're present do we really see all the opportunities that God has for us. So being here, I don't know if you want to be here or if you want to be there and then will come. Eventually it'll be here, but here is where you find joy. Here is where you find love. Here is where opportunity is. And by the way, here is really, really freeing. It's really, really freeing to be here. How many of you are exhausted trying to be all places at all times? Anybody? Anybody tired of trying to monitor this little device that we have all the time and be like, oh man, what's here? And all these other things. There's this gift that I got recently. I got to sit on a plane for 12 hours. Right? It's not really a gift, especially in coach. And so, but they do this thing at the beginning of every single flight where they say, hey, if you have a device, please go ahead and put it in airplane mode. And my rebel spirit says, no, you can't make me, right? But eventually we get above 10,000 feet and there's no signal anyway, so then I put it in airplane mode to conserve my battery. But this crazy thing happens every single time. I was on a plane for 12 hours, and you know what? I landed and I got signal back, and this crazy thing happened. The world was still spinning. You know what I mean? Like it had gone on just fine without me, even though I had not checked all these different things. You see, there's this gift that God has given us. It's a gift that we get to be in one place, just one, in space and time. That we don't have to be all places at all times. We have the freedom to just be one place. And as much as our mind tries to drag us into the past and ruminate on failures and all these other things, or try to relive those days, and as much as the future entices us and tries to tempt us to be worried and anxious and control and all these other things, God says, you know what? You really only have to be right here. And you really only have to be right now. In fact, we can even choose this. We can choose to just embrace the reality that we're in one place. If you're having trouble being in one place at one time, there's a couple of tools that you can use. The first one is this thing called airplane mode. It's right here. You can push that button, and this thing will stop telling you what to do. Just so you know, it'll stop chirping. All the notifications will go away. It's glorious, right? Right? Or if you're afraid of that, you still need them. You could try the do not disturb, so at least it's not beeping at you. You could go that route. Now, some of you aren't Apple users, and I'll pray for you. That's fine. You can figure it out. I don't know. Some operating systems aren't as simple. Or you can go varsity level. I'm pretty sure every phone has this button that if you hold on to it long enough, this thing will actually turn off. It turns out we're in charge of this. It's not in charge of us. We're in charge of it. And we can locate ourselves right where we are. Now, we're also free to not only just be one place at a time. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not against this at all, right? If you look at mine, you'll see that I'm averaging about 3 hours a day looking at this thing. But here's the thing, is when we try to be wherever this is asking us to be and right here at the same time, we're neither one. Because you can't be two places at once. You can only be one. So if someone on here really needs you, let's give them our availability and our attention. And then let's set it down, let's turn it off, let's do whatever we have to do so that wherever we are in that moment, we can give people our availability and our attention so that they can experience joy and love and opportunity and freedom, and so can we. Right? We only have to be one time, right? Our regrets try to pull us into the past, and our worries try to pull us into the future. And how many of you have worried about things that never actually happened? Anyone? Anyone? Just a little a little amen. Okay, I'm pretty sure that's everybody. Mark Twain knew what was up. He said this, I have known a great many troubles, but most of them never happened. Turns out Jesus knows what's up. Eventually, there and then will be here and now, but for now, just be here and now. We exhaust ourselves. Our mind constantly pulls us in other places. Instead, we could just be here. We could just be now. C.S. Lewis said it this way, that the actual present is usually pretty tolerable, I think, if only we will refrain from adding to its burden that of the past and the future. That if instead of trying to bring the past to now and try to bring the future to now, instead we'll just be now, he says, you know what, it's actually pretty tolerable most of the time if we'll just be here and now, that here can be really, really freeing. Now, if those 4 aren't enough, and I hope that they are, because I'm pretty sure every single one of us would like a life characterized more by joy, and more by love, and more by freedom, and more by opportunity. There's one that really is what we're really about here. The hallmark of everything that we actually desire for our lives is this, is that here is where God is. Here is where God is. That God is perpetually present. That he is in all places at all times. That while we are finite and limited, and that's actually a gift for us, he is not. He is infinite, and he is available and present all the time. In fact, if we were to think about the Christmas story, why did Jesus show up? So that whatever separated us from God could no longer separate us, so he could be with us, that he could be present with us, that we could be present with him. It's why Jesus said eternal life is in knowing him, experiencing life with him, and the one true Son whom he sent, that we get to be with him, that God, in an amazing expression of love, showed up so that our lives could be characterized by joy and freedom and love and peace and patience and all these things that he longs to give us, that we actually get to engage him at every single moment when we trust Jesus, that we never have to be separate from him. But here is the only place we can meet him, and here is where we meet him. In fact, this woman named Catherine of Siena in the 1600s said it beautifully this way. She said, the divine moment, you want to know where God is? The divine moment is the present moment. That in every single moment, God has something to offer us, at least himself. In every single moment, every single minute can matter because he's present. And then there's this next layer. Jesus said this really well too, and he said it at the end of his life. He said, you know what, I'll be with you to the very end of the age. Literally what it means is I will be with you the whole of every single moment. That here is where we meet him. The cool thing about all this is that when we rest in God and when we're present with him, which every single one of us can be, in every single moment, in every single place, we can be present with him. If we'll get out of the past and out of the future and just be here, God has amazing things to offer us. And the beautiful thing about that is when we're present with God, it actually prepares us for presence with people. If we really want to be present to those people around us, being present with God is going to give us what we need to be able to do that. That when we're present with God, we have this joy that there is hope, that there is presence, that God loves us, that he's after us, that he fills us with joy. Right here, God will meet us and fill us with joy. Even to the craziness of what Jesus' brother would say, where even when things are hard, we can find joy in the midst of that because God gives us joy. And then we can step in and experience that joy and help other people see joy around us as we're present with them, even on a bus waiting to get across the traffic in the Dominican Republic, or even in the line at Walmart trying to pick up your mobile order, right? Wherever it is, God can meet us there and provide joy for us. That because of his love for us, we are actually equipped and filled with his love so we can offer love to other people. We don't have to go around trying to grab and get from everybody else because God has given us so much. We can offer that to others. That when we rest in his presence and experience and receive his love, when we remember that, now all of a sudden we're equipped. When we remember our failures and how much God loves us anyway, we can step into other people's lives with all of their failures and love them anyway. We can be present. And here we can find joy, and here we can find love. And here we can find opportunity because God took every opportunity and every measure necessary to step in and help us. And he set a model for us that we can step into people's lives with great presence and be attentive and be the help that they need in this moment, right here and right now. And there's no greater freedom than what Jesus offers us. Because of his forgiveness, all of our regrets from the past no longer define us. Because he said, I paid for those. I'll rescue you out of those. Even the hurt that lingers from all of those things, God says, I'll heal you. And so we don't have to relive these things all the time. We can release them. We have freedom. Here is freedom with God. When we're present with him, we can be present with people because we don't have to be obedient to all that junk in the past. And at the exact same time, because God is so powerful and because he's so loving, we don't have to be dragged into the future. There and then will eventually be here and now. And guess who will be there when we get there? God will be there. It'll be okay. And so we can be free to be right here because he can be trusted with there. We can be right now because he can be trusted with then. You see, presence with God is exactly what we need. Because when we are, we can then be really, really present with the people that we love. See, the truth is there's nowhere to be. There's nowhere to be but here. And so the best thing we can do when God says, hey, I'm inviting you to do something, the best thing we can do is do it right away. So we're going to take a few minutes, and we're just going to be present with God in as best a way as we know how. Let's just create some space to be present with God. And so I'm going to invite you to stand up. That way you can get your phone out of your pocket as if you haven't been checking it already. And you can go ahead and push whatever combinations of buttons mean it doesn't get your attention for the next few minutes. Let's just trust God to run the world for the next few minutes, okay? And let's just kind of release the tendency to be like, okay, when you stand up toward the end of church, it's the last one, I'm out, right? Let's just, listen, if you got to go, you got to go. But let's just be present for a minute. We said presence is a gift, right? And if nothing else, we could offer God that right now. We could say, God, I will give you my attention and I will give you my availability for the next few minutes. And so whatever is calling for your attention, whatever distractions are trying to hound you, don't try to fight them. Just acknowledge them and let them just sail on by. Just let them miss you. Don't let them land with you. And let's just consider for a possibility, just for a minute, that God knows what he's doing and that in this moment he has something to offer you, just himself. Just a moment with him could be crazy worth it. Even if he doesn't say anything, even if he doesn't direct you to do anything, just resting with him for a minute would be worthy of your full attention and your full availability. For those of you not sure about this whole thing, just try him. Just consider the possibility that he's crazy about you and will meet you in a moment of quiet. And so our musicians are going to create just a little bit of space because total silence is distracting. And let's just do everything we can to give God our attention. And then in a few minutes, we're gonna sing one more song. You can listen to it if you don't know it and soak it in. But let's let it be a commitment to God that for the next month, we're coming after time with him, and we're coming after presence with him and presence with people. That we're going to pursue him and allow him to fill us in every moment so that we can be really present for others in every moment. With everything you can, let's give God our full attention, our full availability.